They laughed when I walked into the room in civilian clothes. Her fiancé called me a paper pusher playing soldier. His mother slapped me in front of everyone, calling me a liar. But when the commander-in-chief entered and every branch of the military snapped to attention, for me, their faces went white. If you love stories about hidden power and ultimate karma, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't believe where this goes. My name is Rhea Winters, and for the last 8 years, I've been living 2 completely different lives. To everyone who knows me, I'm just a civilian consultant. You know the type, the quiet woman in business casual who sits in the back of military briefings with a laptop, taking notes, scheduling meetings, making sure the logistics run smoothly. I live in a modest 1-bedroom apartment in Alexandria, drive a 10-year-old Honda, and blend into the background so well that most people forget I'm in the room within 5 minutes of meeting me. That's exactly how I need it to be. What they don't know, what almost no one knows, is that I'm Major General Rhea Winters, 3 stars, the youngest person to hold that rank in modern military history. For nearly a decade, I've been running classified joint special operations that I can't talk about, coordinating missions across multiple branches that officially don't exist. My consultant cover isn't just a disguise, it's a necessity. It allows me to move through military spaces, gather intelligence, and make critical decisions without drawing the attention that comes with stars on your collar. The secrecy has been suffocating at times, but it's kept me alive and kept operations secure. I've told myself over and over that it's temporary, that once this assignment ends, I can step back into the light and be myself again. But secrecy comes with a price, and mine was starting to show cracks in the person I loved most. Brendan Castellano was everything I thought I wanted. He's a lieutenant commander in the Navy, sharp in his uniform, ambitious, charming at dinner parties. We met 3 years ago at a military symposium where I was introduced as a logistics contractor. He was kind at first, curious about my work even if he didn't fully understand it. I fell for his confidence, the way he carried himself, the way he made me laugh after long, exhausting days. 6 months ago, he proposed, and I said yes, convincing myself that I could make it work, that I could balance this double life just a little longer until my assignment was complete. But something shifted after the engagement. Brendan started introducing me differently at events. "Oh, she helps with paperwork," he'd say with a dismissive wave, and people would smile politely and move on to talk about real military work. At first I brushed it off. I understood the perception. I looked the part I was playing. But it started to sting when he'd laugh along with his colleagues when they made jokes about desk jobs and people who never got their hands dirty. I'd sit there, smile frozen on my face, while inside I was screaming that I'd led operations he'd never have the clearance to even read about. His mother, Constance, was even worse. Retired colonel, old military money, the kind of woman who measures worth in medals and family lineage. She tolerated me at best, but I could see it in her eyes every time we met. I wasn't good enough. I hadn't served. I hadn't sacrificed. To her, I was just some civilian who'd managed to catch her son's attention, probably for his status and his family name. She never said it directly, but she didn't have to. The cold politeness, the way she'd turn away mid-conversation when I spoke, the subtle comments about real service members whenever I was in earshot. I told myself it would all make sense soon. Once they knew the truth, once I could finally tell them who I really was, they'd understand. They'd see me. I had no idea how badly I'd misjudged them both. The engagement party was held at the Castellano family estate, one of those sprawling properties in Virginia horse country with white columns and manicured gardens that screamed old money. Constance had insisted on hosting, and I knew what that meant. This wasn't a celebration of our love. This was her stage, her guest list, her opportunity to parade Brendan in front of every high-ranking officer and political connection she'd accumulated over 30 years. I was just the accessory that didn't quite match the decor. I'd chosen a simple navy dress, elegant but understated. The moment I walked through those massive front doors, Constance's eyes swept over me like a security scanner that had just detected a threat. "Is that what you're wearing?" she said, loud enough that the caterers turned to look. "This isn't a barbecue, dear." Brendan was right beside her, and he just laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an uncomfortable laugh. A real one, like it was funny. Like I was funny. I felt my stomach drop, but I smiled and excused myself to put my gift down, my cheeks burning. The dinner was worse. The dining room table stretched impossibly long, set with crystal and china that probably cost more than my car. I was seated between a rear admiral and a senator's wife, surrounded by people discussing deployments, strategic initiatives, and sacrifice. Real sacrifice, as they kept emphasizing. Constance sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court, and somewhere between the second and third course, she turned her attention to me. "Tell us, Rhea," she announced, her voice cutting through the conversation like a blade. "What exactly do you consult on? Coffee orders? Scheduling?" The table erupted in polite laughter, the kind that's meant to sound friendly but lands like a slap. I tried to deflect, something vague about logistics coordination, but the rear admiral jumped in. "Have you ever even been in the field?" he asked, genuinely curious, like he was asking a child if they'd ever seen the ocean. I opened my mouth, but Brendan spoke first. "Babe, you've got to admit, you've never done what we do. There's a difference between typing reports and actual service." He said it with this patronizing smile, like he was gently explaining reality to me, like he was being kind. I felt my hands start to tremble under the table. I gripped my napkin so hard my knuckles went white. The room smelled like expensive wine and fresh flowers, and I could hear crystal glasses clinking in celebration, but all I felt was utterly, completely alone. After dinner, I pulled Brendan aside in the hallway, trying to keep my voice steady. I needed to tell him how much that hurt, how disrespected I felt. But Constance appeared before I could get 3 words out. "I've looked into you," she hissed, her face twisted with disgust. "No military record, no service medals, nothing public. You're a fraud, and you're trying to trap my son." I tried to explain that my work was classified, that I couldn't discuss it, but she didn't let me finish. Her hand came out of nowhere. The slap echoed off the marble walls, sharp and vicious. My cheek exploded in pain, and I tasted blood where I'd bitten my lip. Several guests had come into the hallway. They just stood there, frozen. And then Brendan arrived, and I looked at him with tears streaming down my face, waiting for him to defend me, to protect me. Instead, he looked embarrassed, annoyed. "Mom, calm down," he said. Then he turned to me. "Rhea, maybe you should just go. You're making a scene." I slid the engagement ring off my finger. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "You'll understand soon enough," I whispered, and walked out into the night, my cheek still burning, my heart shattered into pieces. 2 weeks passed in silence. Brendan never called, never texted, nothing. I heard through mutual contacts that he'd been telling people we broke up because I couldn't handle military life. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. I threw myself into work, finalized the last classified reports, and prepared for what I knew was coming. The Pentagon had scheduled a mandatory Joint Forces ceremony, the kind where attendance isn't optional for active duty officers. The president himself would be there to announce the new Joint Special Operations Command structure. I knew Brendan would have to attend. I knew Constance would be there too, sitting among the retired officers in the gallery like the dignitary she believed herself to be. And I knew exactly what was about to happen. The day of the ceremony, I stood in my private office at 0500, staring at my dress uniform hanging on the door. Army service blue with 3 silver stars on each shoulder. My chest rack of medals felt heavier than usual as I pinned them on. Silver Star, 2 bronze stars with valor, Purple Heart, Defense Superior Service Medal. Each one represented blood, sacrifice, missions I could never talk about, decisions that kept me awake at night. I'd kept them hidden in a locked drawer for years, and now they caught the early morning light like they were finally allowed to breathe. My hands were steady as I fastened each button. No trembling now, no more hiding. The Pentagon ceremony hall was massive, decorated with flags from every service branch, filled with over 300 military personnel in dress uniforms. I waited in a secured holding area while the ceremony began, listening to the opening remarks through a monitor. I could see Brendan in the audience, sitting ramrod straight in his navy dress whites. Constance was 3 rows behind him, wearing her medals on a civilian suit, her chin raised in that superior way she had. Neither of them had any idea what was coming. The announcer's voice boomed through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the introduction of the new Joint Special Operations Task Force 7 leadership." The doors behind me opened, and my escort nodded. It was time. I walked through those doors into the ceremony hall, and the announcement echoed like thunder. Major General Rhea Winters, Commanding Officer, Joint Special Operations Task Force 7. 300 people rose to their feet in perfect unison, the sound like a shockwave. I walked down that center aisle in full dress uniform, 3 stars gleaming under the lights, and I kept my eyes forward, my spine straight, my stride measured and confident. But I saw them. I saw Brendan's face go from confusion to shock to absolute horror in the span of 3 seconds. His mouth actually fell open. Constance looked like someone had physically struck her, all the color draining from her face, her hand gripping the seat in front of her. As I passed each row, officers from every branch snapped to attention and rendered salutes. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. The sound of hands hitting in perfect unison, the display of respect I'd earned through years of service they never knew about. I reached the stage where the Secretary of Defense waited, and he saluted first before extending his hand. The entire hall held their salutes until I returned them, my hand crisp and sure. In that moment, standing on that stage with hundreds of America's military elite showing me the honor I'd earned, I wasn't the woman who got slapped in a hallway. I wasn't the consultant they'd mocked. I was exactly who I'd always been, and now they finally knew it. The speech I gave was brief and precise, the way military addresses should be. I talked about operational security, about the men and women who serve in the shadows without recognition, about the importance of never judging someone's worth by what you can see on the surface. "Some of the most powerful people I know," I said, looking out over that sea of uniforms, "never need to announce their authority. True strength doesn't require validation or recognition. It simply exists, quiet and unshakable." I never looked directly at Brendan, but I felt his presence like a weight in the room. Every word I spoke was a knife turning slowly, and he knew it. They all knew it. The reception afterward was held in an adjacent hall, champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Officers mingling and congratulating each other. I was immediately surrounded by generals and Pentagon officials, people I'd worked with under my real identity, people who actually knew what I'd accomplished. Brendan tried to approach twice. The first time, he got within 10 feet before a Marine Corps 3-star general physically stepped into his path. I watched it happen from the corner of my eye while discussing logistics with an Air Force Major General. "The general is occupied, Lieutenant Commander," the Marine said, his voice cold enough to freeze water. "Perhaps you should return to your station." The dismissal was surgical and public. Brendan's colleagues were already whispering, staring, the social calculus recalculating in real time. The man who'd mocked his fiancée for not serving had just been revealed as someone who'd disrespected a superior officer. The shame on his face was visible from across the room. Constance was worse. She actually had the audacity to approach me, that fake warmth plastered across her face like a mask. "Rhea, darling, I had no idea. If you'd only told us—" She reached for my arm, and a 4-star admiral I'd been speaking with turned and recognized her immediately. "Is this woman bothering you, General?" he asked, his tone protective and firm. I looked at Constance directly for the first time since that night. I could still feel the echo of her slap on my cheek, still taste the blood in my mouth, still hear her calling me a fraud in front of witnesses. But my face was composed, calm, the face of someone who'd learned to control every emotion under pressure. "No, Admiral," I said quietly. "She's no one of consequence." Then I turned my back on her completely and continued my conversation. Behind me, I heard her make a small sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. She just stood there frozen, publicly dismissed by someone she'd considered beneath her. The real consequences came later, swift and bureaucratic. Brendan was called to his commanding officer's office within 48 hours. An investigation was launched into his conduct, specifically regarding his relationship with a superior officer. Even though we'd never been together officially while I held rank over him, the optics were catastrophic. He'd publicly humiliated and disrespected a major general. He'd allowed his mother to physically assault her. The Navy doesn't forgive that kind of judgment failure. Within a month, he was reassigned to a logistics desk job at a remote naval station in Alaska, his promising career trajectory permanently derailed. The Castellano family name, once pristine in military circles, was now whispered about in hallways with a mixture of pity and disgust. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I didn't need to. Karma isn't about revenge. It's about truth finally coming to light, about people facing the natural consequences of their choices. They judged me, dismissed me, humiliated me, and now they understood exactly what they'd lost. 3 months later, I sat alone in my office at 0200, unable to sleep like so many nights before. But this time it wasn't operational stress keeping me awake. It was clarity. On my desk sat the engagement ring I'd never returned, still in the small velvet box where I'd placed it that night. I picked it up, turned it over in my fingers, watched it catch the dim light from my desk lamp. For so long I'd thought losing Brendan was losing something real, something valuable. I'd mourned the relationship, questioned whether I should have revealed my identity sooner, wondered if I could have made him understand. But sitting there in the quiet darkness, I finally saw the truth with perfect clarity. I hadn't lost anything real. I'd lost the illusion of being loved for who I pretended to be. Brendan had never loved Rhea Winters, the Major General, because he'd never wanted to see her. He'd loved the idea of someone smaller, someone he could feel superior to, someone who made him look better by comparison. And I'd shrunk myself to fit into that role, had hidden my light to make him comfortable, had swallowed disrespect to keep the peace. The woman he'd claimed to love never actually existed. She was just a cover story, and when the truth emerged, he couldn't handle that the real me was someone he had to look up to. The ring went back in the box, and I put it in my desk drawer. Not hidden anymore, just stored away with other closed chapters of my life. The following week, I received notification that I was being considered for promotion to 4-star general, a position that would make me one of the highest-ranking officers in the entire military. They wanted me to lead a combatant command, to step fully into the light after years of classified shadows. The recognition should have felt validating, but what struck me most was how little I needed it. I'd already proven everything I needed to prove, to the only person whose opinion mattered, myself. That afternoon, I stopped at a small coffee shop near the Pentagon, still in uniform, just needing a moment of normalcy. A young female Army captain approached my table, nervous, her coffee cup trembling slightly in her hands. "General Winters?" she said quietly. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was at the ceremony last month. I just wanted to thank you." Her eyes were bright with emotion. "I've spent 3 years in my unit being told I'm too soft, too emotional, that I'll never make it past captain because I don't fit their idea of what a leader looks like. But watching you walk into that hall, seeing all those officers salute you, hearing your speech about quiet strength, you showed me that I don't need to apologize for who I am or diminish my achievements to make others comfortable. You gave me permission to be powerful without being loud about it. Thank you, General." I stood and shook her hand, saw my younger self reflected in her uncertain eyes. "Never shrink yourself for people who are intimidated by your growth," I told her. "The right people will celebrate you, not diminish you. Remember that, Captain." She saluted, and I returned it, watching her walk away, standing a little taller than when she'd approached. That moment meant more than any promotion, any medal, any public recognition ever could. Because real power isn't about proving yourself to people who never valued you. It's about reclaiming yourself, standing tall in your truth, and lighting the way for others who are still finding theirs. I didn't need Brendan's validation anymore. I didn't need Constance's approval. I had something far more valuable. I had myself back, undiminished and unapologetic. They thought they knew me. They thought my worth was measured by what they could see, by what I chose to show them. But real power doesn't need to announce itself. Real strength doesn't require validation. I didn't lose anything that day. I lost people who never truly saw me. And in the end, I found something far more valuable. I found myself again, unapologetic and undiminished. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt underestimated or unseen, drop a comment below sharing your experience. Hit subscribe so you never miss stories about hidden strength and ultimate comebacks. Remember, your value isn't determined by those who can't see it. You already know your worth.